Welcome to the Tune Under podcast. We've got a special episode today. We're going to be doing a few of these through the break to keep us all going, keep us all excited. But we're going to be doing a series of season reviews. So today we're going to be doing a review of the 2001-2002 season. I've pretty selfishly chosen this one because it was my first season with a season ticket back when I was in Newcastle. So I've got real kind of fond memories about this time. And just to give a little bit of a context, I've got Mark with me and I've got Keegan. How you doing, boys?
Doing well, thank you. Looking forward to this one. It's going to be some good reminiscing.
A little trip down memory lane. Hi, Keegan.
It is.
How you doing, Jack? I'm excited too. It was some of the best years of my teenage life watching this stuff.
We're all going to be super excited at the end of this. Honestly, it was a great season and it was just great times. But just to give a bit of a context into what was going on in the world in 2001, it was the year of the 9/11 attacks in September, obviously. And I remember that because there was a game, a Newcastle game the next day, which was in the League Cup when Craig Bellamy scored a hat-trick. And it was a really, really weird atmosphere. There was only, I think it was like 10,000 or something there. It was a really low attendance. So it was that year. It was the year that WWF was dominated by The Rock and by Stone Cold and by Triple H.
Oh,
did you boys like a bit of wrestling?
Oh, mate. Every second of every show I watched. Like that was my life. Like every time that a video, like a VHS was out at the video store, Dad used to take me down on a Friday, get the latest one, take it home, watch it. Oh my God, that was the
Friday
best
night.
time.
Friday night Raw is war. Brilliant. Mark, are you going to admit to liking wrestling, Mark?
I think I was kind of a bit away from that. I'm kind of showing my age as like a little bit older than you two, I think. So yeah, I was maybe starting to grow out of it a little bit. I will say I did my fair share when I was a few years younger.
Mark, you never grow out of it, mate.
I had literally just moved to Newcastle after uni. So that was kind of like I'd moved over, came over for a holiday, ended up getting a job and stayed the year before this. And so went to a couple of games, and then the guy I worked with, so he knew somebody who had a season ticket going, so offered to get me that. So this was actually my first season as a full season ticket holder as well.
All right, it was also the year that the Nokia 3310 was kicking about. Remember the old 3310 with Snake on it? Shaggy was top of the charts with It Wasn't Me. That was the best-selling single. It was the era of Limp Bizkit.
Oh.
It was 3 years before Facebook even existed, and it was 5 years before Twitter existed. Can you imagine a world without Twitter now? Can you imagine football world without Twitter?
Yeah.
It's so much quieter.
Yeah. I'd have to talk to people.
What did the ITKs do then? What did they do? Right to the pink or something? Joe Linton was 5 years old this year, just to put it into a bit of context. And like I said before, it was my first year with a season ticket. My ticket was 6 rows behind the goal in the Leeds' end. So it was a really, really good seat. And obviously, I'd wanted a season ticket for a long time, but my dad was a Man U fan, actually. And season tickets were very expensive back then. So I used to go to the odd game, but this was the year I really started going and really, really fell in love with it. And it's really funny to me to think that Newcastle fans under the age of about 26, 27 won't actually remember this team. And to me, that's just mad because like these poor fans have basically had to put up with Mike Ashley pretty much for the whole time of supporting Newcastle.
Poor bastards.
Nobody under 26 or 27 remembers this team, remembers seeing Alan Shearer in his heyday. Yeah. Does it make you feel old?
It does. I told some of my mates about Laurent Robert, and I said, oh, you should YouTube some of his free kicks. And they're like, what the hell's going on here? Like, why have I never seen these before? And I'm like, oh, anytime he got a free kick. And now, like in today's game, there'd be crosses every single time. And he'd just might get that big run up and just absolutely sink his foot into it every time. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy.
We will be talking about Laurent Robert free kicks. Oh. Don't worry. The one against Derby in particular was one of those ones where he just like lashed it. from like a ridiculous angle. And it wasn't until a few years later he scored those 2 goals against Spurs as well, with 20 free kicks. God, he was magic, wasn't he?
Oh.
But let's what were you guys doing at that? Mark, you've said that you moved back to the UK you were living in Perth?
No, so I was actually in I was in Perth, finished uni, and then came over, got a job. I was working at the Centre for Life in Newcastle, for Newcastle Uni, and managed to get my hands on a season ticket for this. This is my very first season, so happy days. And then obviously led on to the second season where we were actually in the Champions League, and it was just look back on it now, and it was just like the best ever, because all the matches you could always find a dodgy pub on as well, so you could always watch the away games, and you watched the full season without being sleep deprived. It was great.
What a novelty. Keegan, what were you doing in 2001?
2001, I was in my second last year of school, and then 2002 was my last year of school. So I'm pretty sure the games were on Foxtel back then, but it wasn't how it used to be, where you could push the red button and watch every game. It was just, I think it basically mirrored the Sky game, whatever the Sky game was, or the televised games. That's what the Foxtel one got. And then so we lived off that, and there was a hour-long highlight show on a Monday night at 7:30. So we used to see all the goals every week anyway, but not all the games. But that's how we lived our 2001, 2002 life, was through late night Foxtels and 1 hour highlight shows.
It was funny when you were talking about watching the Robbie goals before as well, because when you look at them now, none of it's in HD, is it? It's all blurry, and you can't. It's like watching through a snowstorm, wasn't it?
You can still tell where he is on the pitch, and you're still going, why are you even thinking about taking a shot from here?
Yeah.
And he's just... See how happy we're getting just talking about it.
I know. There was one that, right, I'm not, because we are going to go through the season, but there was one against Southampton that he took as well. And he was 40 yards out. We got 40 yards out, and he's hit it, and it went into the middle of the goal. And the goalkeeper was still nowhere near it. I remember it was Paul Jones. It was in front of me. Paul Jones was in goal. And I was like, how is that even possible? He just hit it so hard and with so much swerve, it just almost broke the net. It was absolutely fantastic. Oh, I'm getting excited.
Yes. We should be doing this in the morning.
I know. Just to set a little bit of the context for that season then. So it was Sir Bobby's second full season. So we came 11th in 2001. It was quite funny that John Carver, remember him? He was in the coaching staff. He was in Bobby's coaching staff. So yeah, Bobby had obviously come in, and it was August 1999 he came in. So this was his second full season. And Keegan, you'd kind of done a little bit of work about some of the signings that we've made in that pre-season. So why don't you just run us through them, and we'll talk about what we thought that, the impact they were going to have at the time.
Yeah, so during the pre-season, obviously Craig Bellamy was the big money signing until Robbie came along. But he signed for $6 million. We had Robbie Elliott come in on a free. Sylvain Distin came in on a loan, I think it was. And then, during the pre-season, they signed Robbie for $9.5 million. So that was pretty much it. So not really a whole influx of new players come in during the time, but the players that did come in made a massive difference to the way the team played. Did we sign
Olivier Bernard as well that pre-season?
I think he'd signed a few years before as a young player.
Okay.
Because it might have been because we got in trouble, didn't we, for the way we signed him or something. There was some kind of compensation we had to pay. But he was in the squad though that season. He didn't play many games. He came off the bench quite a bit. But can you remember, Mark? Can you remember signing Bellamy? Because I remember thinking we've just signed this guy from Coventry who's only scored 6 goals last season. I wasn't that impressed by Bellamy when we signed him. Yeah,
he was only 22 or something when we signed him. It was that, again, it comes down to the fact that we've got Shearer and we've got Dyer and we've got all these big name players, and it's just who's this scrawny little kid that looks about 5'4", and he's like, what's he going to do? But yeah, absolutely blinder of a signing in hindsight. Absolutely played brilliantly for us. It was yeah, touch of brilliance by Sir Bobby.
Absolute gobshite, wasn't he?
Yeah. He could certainly talk, and he backed his own opinion certainly, but you could also play football.
He backed it up. He backed it up on the pitch. He was really good, and
Lightning quick.
We were just saying before, he kind of did a 31-year-old Alan Shearer. He kind of did his running for him at that time.
Yeah,
they didn't get on personally, but when they're on the pitch, they did, and it was brilliant. And Laurent Robert, well, if we didn't know who he was when he signed, we certainly did after a few games. We're going to talk about those games in a minute. But we lost Rob Lee and Warren Barton in the February. So we did sign Jenas in the February for $5 million from Forest, and Rob Lee and Warren Barton, two real stalwarts, real long-standing players. They both went to Derby. So our team was really, I'll run through it. We had Shay Given in goal for for all of the league season. Aaron Hughes was at right back. And then we had Dabazas and O'Brien at centre-back. Robbie Elliott played. He played pretty much all the league games, which I was surprised at. I forgot that he played that many games that season. Then we had Solano on the right wing. And we had Speed in the midfield. And then the other central midfield spot was taken up from a combination of Dyer, Jenas, Rob Lee, and Clarence Acuna. So but all four of those players played at different times of the season, and nobody really nailed down that second position. I think Kieran Dyer was injured for quite a lot of it.
Can I say, though, I actually think Clarence Acuna was a bit of an unsung hero for us. I thought he played so much better for us than he was ever given credit for. He just did the hard yards. He put the graft in and always seemed to he did what he could for us. He was never going to be a world beater, but actually fair play to him. He actually contributed quite a bit for us when you go back and you look at the season highlights.
Yeah, he scored a few goals. So he scored the first goal of the season for us against Chelsea to get a draw. But finishing off the team, we had Robert on the left, and then we had Shearer, who just turned 31 when the season started, and we had Bellamy. So that was kind of the core, and it was a 4-4-2. It was a good old traditional 4-4-2, and it was a bloody good team. It was good to watch, and it's funny, we were talking earlier this week about Botman, but Newcastle have just very rarely had really good defenders. We signed Woodgate the following season, and we've had Colaccini since then, who was really good. But to finish where we did with a centre-back defensive Dabazas and Andy O'Brien, it's pretty good going, I think. And you can see that the defence wasn't necessarily the strength of that team.
Marcelino on the sick table, just in case we needed him.
Marcelino with his fractured fingernail or whatever, it kept him out for 6 years.
Yeah.
So the pre-season was basically the Intertoto Cup, and Rob Lee's testimonial, which was against Athletic Bilbao. So the Intertoto Cup was quite entertaining. We kind of won. There were two-legged games. We beat Lokeren, we beat 1860 Munich, and then we came up against French side Troyes, who were not a particularly big club. But Mark, what do you remember about that game? We drew 0-0 in the first game, and then there was the return leg. Can you remember what the score was and what the hell happened?
Yeah, I know it was 4-4, and we went out on away goals. But we were down and out. We were buried in that game early on. I think it was 4-1, wasn't it? And then
it was, yeah.
It was.
And then we just came back from nowhere, and it was like, oh my God, can we actually still do this? And it was almost like this disappointment at sort of being so close to getting through to the Europa, like the UEFA Cup or whatever it was back then, and to like kind of, but for 4-4 to be the home game, it was just mental. It summed up everything about that team as well. Great going forward, couldn't defend to save their lives.
Yeah, and the Intertoto Cup was, I think that was when like 3 teams won it or something. Still, I don't even think it doesn't exist anymore, does it now?
Don't think so, no.
But we won it when Scott Parker was the captain. I remember that, and he looked thrilled holding the big trophy. But yeah, like what kind of cup do 3 teams win? It's just like, yeah, UEFA doing what UEFA does. But then the league season kicked off, so I don't think there was Keegan, can you remember before this season what your kind of expectations for the league season were and what you thought would be a good season? Or were we just going to wait and see?
I was just going to wait and see because I didn't really know much about the players that had come in. Like, I'd never really heard of Craig Bellamy or Laurent Robert, who are the two big money signings. So you just sort of go in thinking the season's going to be similar to the one before, but maybe a little bit better with Sir Bobby having the full preseason with the team and not really trying to pick him out of the shit like he was the season before. But yeah, I didn't really have any expectations. Just, yeah, probably a mid-table team. Let's see how these new guys go. And that was pretty much it.
So the first game of the season, we had Chelsea away, which we drew 1-1. That was Mark's favourite player, Clarence Acuna, popping up at the end with a late equaliser. That was a good one. And then we had Sunderland at home. So that was a big game. That was my first game of the season ticket was Sunderland. Bellamy scored, I think it was an equaliser for us. We were losing. Yeah, Kevin Phillips scored after 34 minutes, and then Bellamy got us back into it. Shearer had been injured, so he came off the bench in that game. And I remember it was the only time he came off the bench that season because, let's be fair, who puts Shearer on the bench even if he is 31? And Shearer came on as a sub, and then after that he started every single other league game that season. He scored 23 goals.
The hilarious thing for that was when he was interviewed after the game, and he was just like, "Oh, I'm actually like pretty massive dig at Ruud Gullit," and saying, "Oh, I don't mind sort of coming off the bench for this one. I've preferred it much better than the last time." It's just such a dig at Ruud Gullit as well. So that was quite amusing.
Yeah, he wasn't on the bench this time out of choice. He was just not fit enough. But when he came on, I remember that it was goosebump time when he came on in that game. The whole crowd, 52,000, was going crazy. Yeah. And it was Sunderland that had a decent team then, so a 1-1 draw was probably about fair in that game. But then the next two games, we talked before a little bit about Laurent Robert. We weren't really sure who he was before this season. What do you remember, Keegan, about the next two games? So there was Middlesbrough. We beat Middlesbrough 4-1 away, and then we beat Man United 4-3 at home. And really, you could do a podcast about that game.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a separate podcast.
But what do you remember about those two games?
I don't remember much about the Middlesbrough game, and I don't know why. Like, obviously, we beat Man United, and it's always a big thing when we beat Man United. But I think bigger than the actual win against Man United at home was watching Roy Keane completely shit the bed in injury time. Like, I think the fans got more enjoyment out of watching that than watching the win. And then Shearer winding him up as well, which just was like a red rag to a bull. And then Shearer played the innocent, like, oh, no. Like, and I think the more angry he got, the more happier people got watching him. Like, yeah.
That well-known hard man David Beckham was having to hold him back.
Yeah.
No, the Middlesbrough game was obscene because we were losing. I think we were losing, and then Mark Schwarzer got sent off. It was a bit dodgy. I remember, and we got a penalty which Shearer scored, and then we won 4-1. But Robert got a couple of assists that day, and it was like, oh, right, we've got this guy who can score goals like that and who can assist like that. And then I remember his free kick against Man United, which he just put in the top corner against Barthez. And that was right in front of me. Mark, you remember that game?
I remember that game. As Keegan said, it was literally like anytime you're playing Man United at that particular time, it was always this excitement and it's like, what if? And we were playing really well at home too. So, you know, you always kind of went into those games feeling like you could win. But when we were up, and then, you know, Roy Keane kind of, you know, threw the ball at Shearer, and then Shearer called him a little prick, and then Keane like throws a punch. Shearer's just like dodges it, just looks at him, and that was just priceless. It was like bye. So yeah, that was always good. The crowd loved that bit. It was one of those days to remember, certainly.
Shearer's still upset, that goal, the winning goal was taken off him because it was given
as an own goal, wasn't it?
It was given as a Wes Brown own goal. Yeah. And
I reckon
I've
he'd
heard
get
him
away
talk
with
about
that
that a
now.
few times.
I reckon he'd get it now, definitely.
Yeah, but I've heard him talk about that a few times, saying he was, he's still hold a grudge against it. It should have been 207 goals, not 206. He got. Yeah, that was a real magic day. And you look at the Man United goal scorers: Van Nistelrooy, Giggs, Varane. They just signed Varane that season. I think they just signed Rio Ferdinand as well. It just shows you Man United at that time were frightening. And Paul Scholes, the following season he destroyed us, but he always used to do well against us. But that team was just, it was a really amazing team. So that kind of set the scene, really. That set the scene for the rest of the season. We did lose 2 of the next 3 games, though. No, we won 2 and lost 3 of the next 5. And then we beat Everton at Goodison Park. And we beat Villa 3-0 at St James's Park. Who remembers the Shearer goal in that game?
That was phenomenal. I remember that one because it was like, I don't think Shearer even knew how to celebrate that one. It was just, he hit it and he hit it so cleanly, straight into the top corner from this crossfield ball, volleyed it right into the top corner across the goal. And I mean, 99 times out of 100, that's going into row Z for anyone. And he's just caught it so cleanly. The keeper didn't move. And it was just, Shearer just kind of holds his hands up and went, "Yeah, this is amazing." Yeah, it's like even I can't believe I've just done that. So that was an absolutely priceless game, that one as well. Like that and his Everton goal a couple of seasons later, wasn't it? They were
next season.
They were two of his best goals I've ever seen. So
remember that one, Keegan?
Oh, how could you forget it? I remember the same as what Mark said. He just sort of kicked it and then he didn't run. He just turned around with his hands up, like both his hands up as if to say, "Wow, how's that?" Did Amiobi pass that?
No, that was for the Everton goal the following season.
That must have been the only one of his important goals that he wasn't involved in, I reckon.
It was Rob Lee. Yeah, because I've seen them talk about that as well. Rob Lee claims credit for that goal for the pass. But you mentioned the goalkeeper there before, Mark. Do you remember who was in goal for Aston Villa that day? It wasn't just any goalkeeper.
Was it Schmeichel, wasn't it?
It was Peter Schmeichel,
yeah.
You've got Shearer scoring side foot volleys into the top corner against Peter Schmeichel. Oh. Schmeichel had some decent goals scored against him for when he was playing Newcastle, didn't he? But we won't talk about the time he basically won the league for them by keeping us out.
Yeah.
It's a happy podcast.
Yeah, but
yeah, don't bring us down.
Yeah, sorry, we're not going to talk about that. But Fulham, after that game, Fulham beat us in November, and then we went on a 7-game unbeaten run. So we won 6 and drew 1. We beat Derby, we beat Ipswich, beat Blackburn. Two of those 6 games, these are seriously memorable games. 18th of December, 2021. Newcastle travelled down to Highbury to play against Arsenal.
Yes.
This was, I remember I was watching this in my living room, and they took the lead. It was Robert Perez scored for them. And then what happened after that was like nothing that I could ever imagine or, ever thought would be possible for Newcastle. Can you remember that game, Keegan?
Yeah, like it was yesterday. It's like, apart from the Arsenal game from last season, these 2 are my 2 favourite ever Newcastle games, and I don't even think anything comes close to them. Like, I remember the Arsenal game purely because I thought we were going to lose, because we hadn't won in London for like 30 times. So every team in London, like, we'd never won. Arsenal were flying as well. And then I'm pretty sure that game was on. That was a Foxtel game. So it was on because it was a late night kickoff. So it was on early in the morning. I think it might have been a Thursday morning or something. But yeah, I remember Ray Parlour got sent off for 2 yellow cards.
Yeah.
Which that was after Perez scored. So they had a go, and then I think Shearer scored a penalty.
Yeah, O'Brien scored for us first.
Yeah,
so
he got the first goal. Yeah.
Andy O'Brien got
and
it.
then Shearer got the penalty, and then it was. I reckon we had someone sent. Did Bellamy get sent off?
Bellamy was sent off before Shearer's penalty, so he got into some kind of fight with Ashley Cole, or there was a little altercation on the ball, and he got sent off in 72 minutes, and then Shearer got his penalty.
Yeah, so then we hit the front, and it was like obviously pretty nerve-wracking because we'd never won in London, and Arsenal were a good side. Then Robert scored that goal, and I'll never forget the memory. He's like running, and he's running towards the Newcastle fans were down in that corner to the right of screen, and he's like pointing at them, and he's pointing at the players, and he's pointing like, come over here, and then they all just ran over it in the corner. It was just mayhem. And then I thought, my God, couldn't get better. And then 3 days later it did.
Yeah, that Arsenal game, I think that lifted us up to almost top of the table.
Yeah.
That was top of the table.
Is there anything you want to say about that game, Mark? And then I'll give you the next one.
No, that was just special. I think it was just because we hadn't won away from home for so long down in London. Just get that monkey off our back, and it was just let's make the most of this. It was just such a proud moment for all those players, and I think they were so relieved to get that final win down in the capital.
And just for the younger people, sort of younger people watching or listening to this, Arsenal then are not the Arsenal of now. They were a good team. They were top at the time. They were top, and they actually won the league this season. But they had Sol Campbell in his prime. They had Ashley Cole. They had Patrick Vieira. They had Thierry Henry. They had Dennis Bergkamp. So we're not talking about this powder puff version of Arsenal. Robert Pires. We're not talking about the Arsenal that we beat a few weeks ago, who couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. This was a serious team, seriously good team. And they were absolutely frightening to play against. And it was when they were at Highbury.
French World Cup squad.
It was the French World Cup squad. And it was when they were at Highbury as well, before they moved to the Emirates. And that stadium had real character. I went to Highbury once. And you walked into Highbury, and it was through like all these streets and just terraced houses. And then you walked through them, and then there was Highbury, And it was just a real old classic stadium. So we won that game. And then it's almost Christmas time. Mark, Leeds. Talk to me about Leeds.
I watched this game from a pub just around the corner from where I was living at the time, and I remember it because I wasn't feeling very well. I had a really bad headache, but I was like, no, I'm definitely going to go to watch it. And I was staring off into space, and there was like this girl went into my line of sight and then stared at me and gave me a filthy look because she thought I was staring at her, and she's like, oh no, sorry, I was just miles away. But then it was like the game kicks off, and it was just end-to-end stuff for the entire time. And this was a Leeds pre-relegation and financial issues that had some absolutely top-draw players. I mean, Mark Viduka scored an absolutely brilliant goal for them in this game. And I think we opened the scoring, and then they came back, and it was just sort of backwards and forwards. We were 3-1 down, I believe, 3-2 down.
3-1.
We came back, and then I remember Nobby Solano scoring the winner with about 10 seconds of regulation time on the clock, and it was everyone in the whole pub just went absolutely mental. It was one of those classic end-to-end games where we've come back from the dead and we've won it in the death. And it's kind of the one that I can think of from the season just gone was probably that Leicester game where we've won that right at the death as well, and just kind of the feeling of jubilation from all the fans were just fantastic. So that was, but to beat that Leeds team, given at Leeds as well, given how bad our away form was that season, and B, how good that Leeds team actually was. I do remember Eric Backer that rifled a shot in.
Ian Hart.
Ian Hart did.
Yeah, their goal scorers were Bowyer, Viduka, a big Aussie Viduka, and then Ian Hart got a free kick.
Ian Hart, I remember his goal because it was like absolutely miles out and just lashed it into the far corner of the goal. Didn't kind of go off the ground by any more than about 2 foot for the entire time. Absolute rocket of a shot, But to come back and win that the way we did was just absolutely brilliant.
Nobby Solana didn't outpace many people, but I think Ian Hart at the end of that game was just absolutely gassed. And Nobby outpaced him and put it in the bottom corner. And I remember Bobby did his jig on the sideline then as well. And the commentator said something like, Bobby Robson does a jig and then remembers he's almost 70 years old, or something like that. It was just, it was absolute magic, wasn't it? And Newcastle went top of the table in that game. So we were top of the table at Christmas. And then we beat Middlesbrough 3-0 on Boxing Day. Absolutely no fuss whatsoever. So those games, like, they're just magic, aren't they? Like, looking back on them, because it was a bit unexpected, maybe that was what was going to happen. We didn't know how good this team was going to be that season, and there wasn't any expectation going into these away games. And we pulled it off. And I think as long as we support Newcastle, we'll be lucky if we'll get 2 away wins like that again together, you know. After that, we lost to Chelsea and Man United, which was quite standard. Chelsea beat us 2-1. So Idegard Johnson scored a couple of goals in that game at St James's Park. And Man United beat us 3-1. Van Nistelrooy scored, and then Scholes scored a couple of goals, as he tended to do against Newcastle. And Shearer got a late consolation. So even though we were kind of winning, we were going on these runs and we were winning games, I don't think anyone really felt that we were going to win the league, did they, at this stage?
No. It was one of those times where we'd played above ourselves and we'd gotten some really good results from just sheer effort and, you know, a bit of magic here and there. But, you know, we were conceding goals for fun. And I don't think anyone that I knew at the time was legitimately thinking, yeah, we're going to win the league here. It was, yeah, we could finish European here. And I think there's like finally started to dawn on us that we might get Champions League football. But even then it was like, oh, there's still a long way to go. And there's still some pretty good teams below us. And I mean, I think Man United was still below us at that point in the season.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
it was the first season as well that I'm pretty sure it was the first season that the team in 4th qualified for the Champions League. Yeah. So previous to that, it was the top 3. And I'm certain that it was the top 4 this season for the first time. But after we lost those 2 games to Chelsea and Man United, we beat Leeds 3-1. We had a 0-0 at Leicester, which I think, Keegan, I've just stolen your stat there.
Yeah, you bastard. Yeah, sorry. that was the only 0-0 we had for the whole year. It was that Leicester game.
Yeah.
So they really, yeah, and that's like, I remember I wasn't expecting to win the league either, but I remember thinking, shit, this is fun to watch. Like, it didn't matter who we were playing. Like, there was going to be some entertainment, whether we copped it or we gave it, but it was going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, we beat Spurs 3-1 away. Acuna scored again. He had a few goals, didn't he, that season?
He did.
Big Clarence. Shearer and Bellamy scored in that game. We beat Bolton 3-2 at home. Shearer and Bellamy, surprise, surprise. We beat Southampton 3-1. That was I'm pretty sure that was the game where Robert scored that obscene free kick. Where he just hit it from 40 yards and it went in the middle of the goal. And we beat Sunderland 1-0. So this was a real... Because I don't actually know if I could remember winning a derby game in my life before this. I'm not sure. I just can't remember. I think this might be the first one I can really... It's the first one I can really remember winning anyway, like as a fully paid up, fully fledged supporter. Do you remember this? Do you remember this result, Keegan? Who scored the goal?
Yeah, I do. Dabazas scored the winner, and I reckon he had 2 or 3 pretty good looks that I think one might have got saved or one hit the bar before he actually scored. So, yeah, and I think the one he ended up scoring was like in a box, and he just sort of headed it and just knocked it into the net. I think the keeper was committed to the front post, and he sort of maybe between the middle and the back post, and the ball would come through. Shearer might have tried to flick it on, and he just sort of hit his head and knocked it in. But I'm pretty sure as well, that was Sir Bobby's first time that he'd beaten Sunderland as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, they might. I know. Maybe were they in the division the year before when they played them, or
they'd been in the Premier League for a while, but we've kind of switched a few times. So
Yeah.
and we just weren't that good against them. I don't think.
No.
I don't remember us really doing too well against them in the years before that. But Mark, what about Dabazas's rug on his chest after that goal? That was nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, because he took his shirt off and
Yeah.
and gave us all a sort of unfiltered view of the beast that lies within, so to speak.
Made us all feel
he's a
immediately
hairy,
less
hairy
masculine. Put us all to shame. We should have had Dimmy on for this one, shouldn't we? The Greek god, even though he's too young to remember this season. Yeah, so I remember that was a really significant result, and we deserved to win that game. And then we came up against Arsenal and came up against Liverpool. This Arsenal game was famous for one particular goal. Mark, was Bergkamp's goal a fluke or did he mean it?
This is not going to go down well. I actually think he meant to grab the ball, but I don't think he meant it to go where it went. But fair play to him for actually reacting as quickly as he did. I don't think he meant the whole thing. I think it's been replayed so many times over the years. I keep getting flashbacks to it now. Absolutely cracking goal, but there's no way he actually meant to pull that off. It was just fortuitous where it went and his reactions times, I think.
Keegan?
No, not a chance.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you look at Bergkamp and you see some of the goals he scored, and it's like he can actually do that kind of thing. So I think, but no one can even think to possibly try and do what he did.
No,
so,
improvisation 10 out of 10. Execution of his plan 1 out of 10.
Yeah. But he scored what probably is going to go down as one of the best goals the Premier League's ever seen.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably
That's why he's a good that's why strikers are good when they can think on their feet and improvise the same way that he did. Well, that's why they're good players, because they could do that sort of stuff, not for that skill, because he didn't do any skill at all.
The Arsenal fans are already upset with us today after that tweet Craig put out.
Oh yeah, thanks.
So they're going to be more upset now. Yeah. After we stole Bruno from them as well, they're not very happy. But so we lost that game. We lost to Liverpool, and that pretty much put an end to any kind of lingering title hopes I think we had. Arsenal were quite a few points ahead by then. We had a pretty disappointing 2-2 draw with Ipswich as well, where we were losing 2-0 and we came back to draw 2-2. But after that, we only won one of the next kind of 6 games after that Arsenal game. And we drew with Ipswich. We beat Everton 6-2 in what was quite a crazy game. Carl Court scored a goal. Remember him?
Yes, I do. I think that's when Bellamy got
under
injured.
21 for England.
Yeah, he was a decent player. He was just injured.
He was decent. He was just always injured again. It was like we used to pick them.
Yeah. We had a draw against Villa. We drew 1-1, and we drew against Fulham. So really, the Everton win in that run of 6 games is the only win we had.
I think that was the Bellamy roulette sort of period of the season where he got injured, and then they were sort of trying to find someone who'd work with Shearer. So like Carl Court had a go. Luar had a couple of starts. Amiobi, a young giraffe like Amiobi, had a couple of starts. And I think they were trying to find someone who could work with Shearer the same way Bellamy was, but they just couldn't do it. Like they were perfect for each other. As much as they hated each other, they were perfect for each other.
Do you remember Lua though? Like what a circus clown he was.
Yeah,
like he was just mental to watch because he never knew what he was doing. Nobody else knew what he was doing, and then he'd score these absolute blinders and then go away and doing backflips up the pitch. It was just like absolutely like what is going on here? But I'm loving every minute of it. Just
So his first goal he done won, and I'm pretty sure his first goal was away from home, and his first home goal was, I think it might have been the next week or the next game was a home game, and he scored that on his home debut, and I reckon he done about 7 or 8 in a row after that. And we were like, well, I just want this guy to score every week now if he's going to keep doing this stuff.
Because he signed the season before, and I remember getting his name on the shirt because he was excited. You know, he was like Tino, wasn't he? He was not as good, obviously, but he would just do all these tricks and flicks. He was signed in from Colchester, I think it was. And there was a bit of controversy with him in later seasons when we let him go on loan to Portsmouth and he scored against us when he was still our player. So that prompted a bit of I think that might have been what prompted the change in the rules where you can't play against your parent club. Yeah. But Keegan, you're right there. So he scored the winner against Derby in a 3-2 win.
Yeah.
That was the game where Robert scored that ridiculous free kick where he was out wide. Yeah, and it was like he's clearly just gonna cross this, and he just absolutely twatted it into the near inside post.
I think that shows a fair bit of the thought or his thought process. Like 99% of players with the ball there would be thinking, oh, like we'll cross this to the back post or the front post, whatever it is. And his mindset's, I'm having a ping and I think I'm going to score from here. Like it just shows how mad he was.
And he did score though, right?
Yeah, but that's why he sort of like. I know it's a different sport, but he sort of reminds me a bit of Steph Curry, where he sort of takes a shot and you're like, why are you taking a shot? And then it goes in and you're like, oh, wow. And then, so them shots aren't stupid. Like he's a genuine 50-50. He's going to score from these spots.
Yeah. You can't really compare him to anyone now, I don't think, who takes free kicks. I mean, you've got James Ward-Prowse who takes free kicks for Southampton, who's got a good record, but it's a different technique. He doesn't just leather them as hard as he can, but also know that they're going to go in.
Hit or get hit. It's your choice.
Because the fact is with Robert that if he kicked it hard, then he knew that if he kicked it hard, the keeper might not be able to save it.
Yeah. But even some of the spots, like Ward-Prowse would never think about having a shot from where some of Robert's free kicks come from. Like, if he's probably the best free kick taker in the Premier League at the moment, and I don't reckon it'd be one slither of his mind that would think, I'm having a pop from here.
No, not from those positions.
Oh.
In fact, because this was a different season and because we're not going to do this season review, which of his goals against Spurs do you think was the best? Mark, you go first.
It's that game is probably a little bit blurry. I don't remember too much of it. So I'm going to stay out of this one. I have a feeling I may have been in the pub for a little bit before this one.
Keegan, do you remember those goals?
Was one of them? I don't even know how to describe it. Was like a flip. Was one of them ones like a scorpion kick?
No, that was against Fulham. So it was against Spurs in 2004, and one of them was where it was looped high, and Casey Keller was in goal, and he just volleyed it from about 30 yards. One was where it was on the ground, and he just absolutely, like, there was no reason why he should have been shooting from where he shot from.
Then that one. Anytime that he takes a shot where he shouldn't shoot from, that's the one I'll...
Yeah, but I mean, there was no finesse with him, though, as you said. It was literally just, let's just hit it as hard as we can. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want anyone to have... There's kind of like a little bit of a sadistic part of my brain wanted to see someone actually get hit by one of his shots. I don't know if you remember, but Olivier Bernard got hit by one of his clearance.
He knocked him out.
Yeah. And literally
had concussion. Yeah.
And like just sort of staggered back and like some complete Bambi and just like fell over. It was like, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah. Bernard,
that was against Leicester.
Yeah,
that was against Leicester the next season. I was at that game as well. That was an away game.
That was priceless.
He got jelly legs.
Yeah,
I'm surprised he didn't die, to be honest. So
fair power behind them.
So the season we finished with 3 wins out of 5. So including that Derby win, we beat Charlton 3-0, and Loa did score in that game as well. Keegan drew with Blackburn, beat West Ham, and then we lost to Southampton. But by that, we always used to lose at Southampton, and by that point, the 4th place was wrapped up anyway.
Yeah.
We finished 4th on 71 points. And as we said before, we qualified for the Champions League. Arsenal won the league with 87 points. So they were a good 16 points ahead of us. And it was, it was a tough ask to catch up against that Arsenal team. They were just brilliant. And like I said before, Arsenal, they had the invincible season a few years later. I think that was 2004, 2005. But they were a serious team back then, which was why that win that we had over them was so special. Fourth in the table. You take that this upcoming season, wouldn't you, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. It'd be nice to have a 23 goal scorer forward as well in the bank to go into the new season with. But yeah, definitely, if you could, I mean, I'd snatch your hands off the top 6, top 7 at this point. But to think that, I mean, to be honest, that came out of nowhere that season. So it's not like we went into that season expecting to finish 4th. We exceeded expectations. I think there's a few mad nutters out there who have suggested that Newcastle might finish in a Champions League spot next season just because of the form that we had since Eddie Howe took over. I think that's a big ask. I don't think we've got that in us for the entire season, but stranger things have happened. Let's just go into next season and hope for the best. But yeah, take your hands off for that sort of stuff now. That was the heady days of Sir Bobby Robson's finest.
And it's exciting, isn't it, Keegan, knowing that, we might not finish 4th, we might not get Champions League like now, but we are going to have good times again. And that's why I think partly why we're doing this podcast now. It's the ambition, it's a feeling around the club, and it's just a feeling that we are going places again.
Yeah, and it's just good to go into a season with a bit of optimism. Like, we're not dreading the season, and we don't look at the fixtures and every game's a banana skin now. Like, we don't think like that anymore. Like, we've actually think positive things going into a season. And although we didn't really think that much positive, like, we weren't all negative going into this season. It was just a bit of let's see what happens. We've got the best striker in England, and anything could happen. But yeah, I don't think we ever dreamt that we were going to finish in the Champions League spot. Never mind be top of Christmas for starters, but then finish 4th. Like, compared to, like, you went through the Arsenal team and the Man United team and stuff like that. Like, look at our defense. We should never have been anywhere near there, and we beat them both. Like, we should never have been there, but Sir Bobby worked these miracles, didn't he?
We're going to go through some stats like that I found quite surprising from the season in a minute, but just in the cups, in the FA Cup, we beat Palace, Peterborough, Man City, and then lost on a replay to Arsenal in the quarterfinal. The home game was a really good game, I remember that, and then we were comfortably beaten away. Arsenal beat Chelsea in the final to get the League and Cup double. That's how good that Arsenal team were. They were really good. In the League Cup, we beat Brentford the day after 9/11. Like I said before, Bellamy got his hat-trick. This is when Brentford were in League 1, I think. They were really low down. We beat Barnsley and Ipswich and then lost at Stamford Bridge to Chelsea in the quarterfinal. And Blackburn under Graham Souness actually won the League Cup that season. They beat Spurs 2-1 in the final. But looking at some of these player stats, which I found was really, really interesting. Shay Given played in every game that season apart from 3 League Cup games when we had Steve Harper playing in those. And you guys talked last week in the pod about how hopefully now we've got a bit of competition. And I've seen with Pope and Dubravka, and I've seen a few people say that it's the best competition we've had since we did have Shay Given and Steve Harper, which is 20 years ago, 21 years ago, So that just shows you how we've been ran over the last few years. Robbie Elliott made 40 appearances in total, which I was really surprised about because I don't remember him featuring that heavily. I just always thought that Olivier Bernard had played in that season, but he hadn't. He only made 23 appearances. Most of those were off the bench. We were talking about defence before. Andy O'Brien made 44 appearances in all competitions. This is a guy that we signed from Bradford City for like 2 million or something. And, he was a decent player, but he was no superstar, He was really quite limited. Nobby Solana, what a player. We haven't really given him much love because we've been talking about Robert. but he made 52 starts that season. He only missed one league game. No central midfielder other than Gary Speed made 20 league appearances. So that's what I was saying before about it was Rob Lee until he was sold, and it was Acuna, and it was Dyer who was coming back from injury, and then it was Jenas when he signed. But Gary Speed's another one. This is just a team that is just jam-packed full of quality players, isn't it? Quality characters as well, real big characters. Yeah. In terms of goals, only Shearer hit double figures league goals. He got 23. So, you know, he got double figures for two people, really. Solano got 12 overall goals. Bellamy got 14, and Robert got 10 in all competitions. Shearer got 27 in all competitions. And Shola and Loa, the young guns, they each scored 5 goals in all competitions. Some of the stats there.
Shola did quite well in the Intertoto, didn't he? He scored a few in that.
I think so. I think he did, yeah. And then he scored a few more the following season. Yeah. But what about any of those stats or any of those players you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
I think one of the things that stood out for me was everyone bagged out the Intertoto as like a bad idea because we were starting too early and we were going to get fatigued. But I actually think we started the season off so well because we were like match ready straight away.
Competitive football, yeah.
Yeah. So I actually think that did us a lot of good. Although, you know, Shearer was interviewed saying that he wasn't keen on it, but I totally understand. Like some of the senior players probably didn't need that, but you know, I think for some of the squad players, it actually really helped. And the fact that there was such a spread of goals, you know, from midfield, and I think that's what we've been missing over the last few seasons is those regular scorers from midfield. You know, how good was Gary Speed, like running onto the ball and in the air for someone his size? You know, Robert's scoring these like Mad Hatter free kicks from God knows where. And Nobby Solano is like chipping in with a few goals here and there, but his crossing was absolutely top draw. You know, it's just like you look everywhere all over that pitch was just quality players in the front half. Obviously, the less said about some of the defenders, the better, I think. But you know, we still did all right. They were doing their jobs. Shay Given actually made a few really bad errors at the start of that season. I remember.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he gifted a goal away against Chelsea in the opening game, didn't he?
Yeah. But Nobby scored 12 goals in all competitions. Robert got 10. So that just shows you we've been giving Robert all the love because of the ridiculous goals he scored. But Nobby could take a free kick too. Yeah. And he could score a goal as well. Anything you wanted to kind of pick out there, Keegan, or anything else you want to say about this before we wrap up?
Oh, yeah. I think just judging the season as a whole, we scored 30 more goals than the season before. Like, that's ridiculous. Like 30 more goals than the season before. Like, no wonder they just kept the games were entertaining all the time because you knew like there was goals, and it was sort of very similar to the Keegan era where it was we'll beat you 5-4. It doesn't matter. We're not scared of it.
Shearer the season before, I remember he was injured, I think, at the start of the season. And he was getting back, or he was injured at the end of the previous season or something, but he was getting back into, you know, and people were saying he was finished because he was 30 and because his pace was gone a bit.
Is that when he done his ACL?
He did it. I think he did it before that. You think he did do it again then, or he had another really bad injury anyway?
Yeah, he was there for a while.
People were saying he's finished and he's done, and then. He still scored. He scored like over 100 more goals for Newcastle after that. After he turned 30,
he did his game really well after his major injuries. Though, like he clearly did lose the pace, and he was never going to be the same striker. But he didn't try to be, and I think that's something that was really special, and probably gets overlooked a bit. Where you know any strikers that Harry Kane hasn't really had a major injury to come back from. He's just carried on doing what he always does. He hasn't had to change his game. For Shearer to do what he did and come back from those like career-threatening injuries and change the game for how he did and still score all those goals was absolutely fantastic and really underrated. And you think, yes, okay, we've touched on it. Bellamy definitely prolonged his goal scoring for him because he did all the running for him. But, you know, that's what building a squad's about.
And he had Laurent Robert and Obi Solano crossing it in directly onto his head, 6 yards out from goal at times. And he took all the penalties as well, which he almost always scored. Missed a couple, but
if you ever get a chance, nearly every one of his penalties, he goes left. And the keepers still go the other way. Like, obviously, they don't do the analysis that they do now with penalty takers and stuff. But if you ever get a chance to watch the highlights of that season, nearly every one of his penalties is left. And half the time, the keeper goes the other way.
But even if they went the right way, they were probably not going to get there because he just leathered the ball.
No,
There's none of this like little stutter step run-ups and like try to fake the keeper out or chip it or like put it into the middle of the goal hoping that the keeper goes one way or the other. He just leathered the crap out of it. And it was 9 times out of 10 right in the corner of the goal. So the keeper had no chance anyway.
I remember Paul Robinson. Remember we played... Who was it?
Yes.
No, it was against Sheffield Wednesday this season when Bobby
was the 8-1, 8 goals.
8-1, yeah. Shearer scored 5 goals, and I think he'd scored 4 goals already, and we got a penalty. And Paul Robinson, the young striker, was like, "Oh, can I have this penalty?" And Shearer is just like, "No, you can't. Don't even ask." And he'd already scored 4 goals, and Paul was like, "Oh, I just want to score my first goal." No, it's not happening. That's what Shearer was, though, and it actually makes me a bit sad that some younger fans don't remember Shearer. At least they can see video, like, you know, we don't remember Jackie Milburn and Hughie Gallagher, and there's very little video of them. But
even Malcolm McDonald, like, you know,
but at least there's video of Shearer, and people can see how good he was. And like I said, he scored over 100 goals after he turned 30, and he retired from England at 29, which helped us as well.
Yeah, but
to battle back from those injuries, he was just perfect in every way, wasn't he? How am I supposed to go to sleep tonight after this? I'm just too excited and too happy. I think we should leave it there, though. That's been really enjoyable, fun trip down memory lane.
I've enjoyed that.
Yeah, we will be back next week. So we'll be doing a review of the 2002-2003 season, the following season, which was the Champions League season. And then later on, we'll be looking at a couple of the more recent seasons as well. So young baby Dimmy can get involved in the act as well. All right. Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks very much, Keegan.
Cheers.
Pleasure, Jack.
I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.
Catch you later, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.